Have you ever found that you're repeating toxic relationships? Maybe you've had intimate relationships with a toxic person, but you're also noticing, oh gosh, one of my parents was toxic, or your boss was toxic, or a colleague was toxic, or even one of your team members was toxic, or friends are toxic. You might find that actually you're attracting narcissists into your life, or this is a repeating pattern for you because you've had more than one toxic relationship. And perhaps you've actually had therapy in the past, but you still can't seem to shake it off. And you're wondering why. Why have I got this repeating pattern? Now, we need to really look at this compassionately. And I'm going to really explain why this is important, because I talk to people all the time that are quite frustrated, quite angry, quite upset, or internalizing this as though there's something wrong with them because they haven't been able to have the relationships they want. They actually believe that there's something fundamentally wrong. Look, one spiritual teacher says that liberation, actually becoming your authentic self, is something that you don't achieve all of a sudden. It's not like you just wake up and you're like, oh, I've had a spiritual awakening. Now I am an authentic self. It happens as gradually as you realize that you're so much more than just your personality. And in a way, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that when we've been in a toxic relationship, it's actually an opportunity to actually liberate yourself from past belief systems, past trauma, whatever it could be that you're meant to liberate yourself from, so that you can become more of who you are, so you feel free to be who you truly are, rather than what society wants you to be. Each of us will always feel fear in terms of moving towards authenticity, because the truth is we have been taught from a young age. Children were afraid to be their authentic self. So just think back. Maybe you were quite a curious person. You asked questions. You were asking your parents, why is this that we're meant to do this? And you were questioning, and actually that made them think that perhaps their thinking or their belief systems might not be right. So then they answered, just because I said so. I don't know if you've experienced that, but there's always going to be fear. This is why there's a thing called courage. And I don't mean to say it in a horrible or negative way, but courage only exists because we all experience fear. Yeah. And fear basically has to be confronted, has to be recognized and understood and accepted. Because honestly, the biggest stress of any human being is the emotions based around trying to be someone that we're not. Trying to fit into somebody else's way of them needing to be you. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because if you've been in a toxic relationship, I know what that feels like. Narcissists live in an illusion. And they want you to live in their illusion. They're trying to make you out to be someone that you're not. You have to compromise all yourself, and to find peace, you're finding you're compromising, but actually all it's doing is actually creating you more and more stress because you're feeling the pain, you're feeling the emotional pain of not being yourself and compromising day in, day out. And there's a lot of deep work to be done so you can liberate yourself and feel joy once again. And I promise you will feel joy again. I have had so many people so confused because they've done so much therapy in the past and they've repeated toxic relationships. It's because there's 4 main things that you need to heal to be able to move forward and not repeat toxic relationship patterns, especially the trauma bond. And I'm going to go into that deeper later on. So, please stick around and I'll explain to you the 4 key things that you actually need to release yourself out of this trauma bond so that you can move forward. So even if you've done therapy, don't worry. you will repeat toxic relationships, or you will get triggered, or you will feel not as motivated as you did before, or inspired to make the most of your life. You might even feel like, I'm too tired, I've grown out of that, or I just don't have the energy to do some of the things that you used to do, which brings you joy. But instead of feeling frustrated with yourself, like, why am I doing this? I really need you to do something slightly differently, and I'm going to explain the reasons why. I would say that everything we do, we need to come from love, especially if we've been in a toxic relationship, because otherwise we have no choice but to put the shutters down and start defending ourselves or explaining ourselves, because we've been trained to do that, and we end up doing that in our own minds otherwise. So I want you to come at this as though there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. So many times people believe that there's something wrong with them, but there isn't. I promise you, there's nothing wrong with you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You've got to ask the question, but there's two ways of asking that question. One is, where we're sort of asking in a way like, why am I doing this, in a frustrated, angry, helpless, hopeless way? Yeah. And I'm going to divert for a second here, because lots of people talk to me and ask me, how do I love myself? How can I love myself? What does that mean? Because love is the greatest healer. Now, two key things, I think there's lots of different ways of really truly loving yourself, but two key ways are, you've really got to stop criticizing yourself. And when we've been in a toxic relationship, we've been trained and we've been criticized over and over again. So this is a really big one. Yeah, you've got to stop criticizing yourself or making out or being horrible to yourself, in your own mind, where you feel bad about yourself. Stop that internal language and, stop giving yourself a hard time. That is the number one way of actually cultivating self-love after you've been in a toxic relationship. And that is key to actually healing. Second thing you need to do is stop scaring yourself. The thing that narcissists do is they increase the fear that we live in on a day-to-day level. They increase the amount of criticism that we give ourselves, and that we consume from them on a day-to-day level. So fear is created within ourselves, that we're high levels of fear, where there's anxiety, there's trauma. Normally, most people that have been in toxic relationships, there will be trauma, there will be anxiety. It could lead to panic attacks, or it could lead to disease, because our body is taking on all these stress hormones. So the most important thing to remember is, it's not one thing that you've endured when you've been in a toxic relationship. It's like the drip effect. Imagine, it's like, if someone's dripping constantly, fear, anxiety, it's not one or two drops that make the impact. It's actually the continuous abuse, the continuous put downs, that actually causes you to be feeling overwhelmed in this trauma. So just imagine that, if we're talking about drips, imagine there's water being dripped on a table. Eventually that water is going to be full and it's going to be dripping down onto the floor. And if it continues, before we know it, we're in a sea of water. It's the accumulative effect that you really need to acknowledge. It's not one thing, it's an accumulation of everything. And that is what they do so effectively. And that is why you can't explain what has happened to you, because there's just it's an accumulative effect. They're basically saying that you're not good enough just the way you are. And that actually makes us feel bad. We're criticizing ourselves all the time. We're walking around with this feeling of feeling not good enough. And that's when you actually ask yourself, like, why can't I just move forward? Why am I being negative? Why have I lost myself? Why do I not know what I want anymore? And you get frustrated. You're almost accusing yourself of not being good enough. It's pretty much what the narcissists have been doing. is making you feel like you're not good enough. And when we ask a question of like, why am I repeating this, and get frustrated with ourselves, we're actually putting ourselves down and we're telling ourselves that we're not good enough. But what we've got to do is get curious. Yeah, you're probably someone that's really smart, intelligent. You've probably done a lot of research into narcissism already. You know, you are curious. You are somebody that has been curious about the narcissist and their behavior. Now you need to get curious about the impact that the narcissist has had on you. Really get curious about it. Rather than thinking that there's something wrong and that you have to hide it, you really need to get curious and say, okay, I am clever, I am intelligent, and I have achieved a lot in my life, but I know I don't feel like myself. I wonder why that is. You know, really get curious about it, and that will enable you to answer the question. So you don't get your shutters down, you don't get your defenses down. You can actually look at it then. You've got the energy to look at it because you're not actually giving yourself a hard time. That is why trauma therapy is so important. Do not go for your bog standard, talk therapist, because they won't understand the importance of making sure that you don't get your shutters down, and that you're not accusing yourself of doing something wrong, or that there's something wrong with you. Why can't you just follow this? Why can't you just leave them? Why did you stay in that relationship? Why, it's not about that, not in that way where you feel bad about yourself. It's really being quite asking the right questions in the right way. Personally, I think you need, trauma therapy that is fast acting, that can really heal the brain. But, it depends on what you can or can't do. So trauma therapy is a must if you've been in a toxic relationship. Otherwise, you're just doing therapy, but you're not getting the result that you would like, in terms of using your resources effectively. So look, the truth is we need to love ourselves again to start seeing the truth, right? That's why I'm bringing this up. The truth, we can't see the truth of and the reality if we keep shutting down from seeing who we truly are. So in order to see the truth, because remember, the narcissist has taken us into an illusion, and we've been living in this illusion, including living in an illusion that we're not good enough. And now is the time to ask the right type of questions so that we can then open to the opportunity that we can heal and be compassionate towards ourselves and love ourselves. So, so we're not stuck in the illusion that the narcissist has created. To heal, we need to bring love to ourselves in a really big way. And it's likely that if you've been in a toxic relationship, you would have given to exhaustion, even when you no longer want to, right? So one of my clients who's honestly, she's absolutely amazing. She's got so much going for her. She's just, she's got everything going for her. She's absolutely incredible. She knows that she wants to say no, but she just can't. Luckily, she is learning to say no now, but it's because a habit has been created. Something you've learned in an early life from before, where you had no choice in the matter. So, it was ingrained in your brain to, not be authentic, not to be yourself. That it's not good to be who you truly are, so that because the person, whoever looked after you, it might have been a foster parent, might have been whoever looked after you, was telling you that you shouldn't be authentically you, that you have to fall into what they're asking you to do. So over time, you probably have learned a habit of not being yourself, not feeling safe to be yourself. And you have to heal those patterns. It's really important, especially if you've been in a toxic relationship, to actually get to your authentic self again. And remember, you can't do this overnight. It's not a switch that you just turn on. If you were to, go to the gym today and start running like 4 miles or 4 kilometers and you've never walked anywhere, or you haven't even walked 4 kilometers, it's going to be tough. You have to gradually build up to something. It's like a muscle. All of this is like a muscle. You know, we're relearning how to live a new way of life. It's a new way of being. We cannot compare ourselves to anybody else. I do not want you to compare yourself to any other person that's in any other relationship. Do not do that, because no one else might have had the stresses and the trauma that you had. And that is what shaped you to be in the way you have and choose the kind of relationships that you've chosen. Let's look at why narcissistic relationships have causes us to live in and get addicted to living in stress in a way. Stress has 3 main components. You know, there's obviously the external stress, and here now we're talking about the narcissist. It's really stressful living with a narcissist. You don't know what you're going to get. And then the final thing, and I'm going to come to the middle in a moment, the final component is, you know, the physiological stress response that goes on in our body. Inside our body, there's hormones that are released. There's adrenaline, there's cortisol, there's a nervous system that's impacted. The heart gets impacted a lot. And you might even find that you're getting diseases, you know, or you might get panic attacks, but you're reacting physiologically. Like a lot of people feel more fear than they used to feel, even doing things that they used to do all the time with ease. But in between the stressor, the narcissist, and our physiological response, something happens, you know, that within us that interprets, you know, what is happening to us or what is happening. And that really is based on our belief systems, you know, what we understand that to mean. So the narcissist might say, criticize us, for instance. And we interpret it that I've done something wrong, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm just, you know, this is really tough, why did I deserve to be in a relationship like this? Loads of things might go through your mind depending on how you've grown up and your belief systems that you've got in place, and maybe even how you're culturally brought up as well. You'll basically interpret what's going on based on your past experiences, your past feelings, your past trauma. If we heal the stories or the trauma that was in the past, we can become present now. We feel free to really be ourselves, our authentic self. And actually then we're able to connect with our own authentic self. There's a part of us that, you know, our gut instinct, our intuition, our inner guidance system, our inner knowing, that is more loving and compassionate towards ourselves. We can start to connect to that. We can get to a point where we no longer create stresses in our body because we react then, or we create a different meaning to what the narcissist is doing. You can actually get to a point where you look at the narcissist and think, oh my gosh, you really are quite messed up. You know, you're a narcissist. I can see how this is triggering you, and you're actually just trying to control me right now. You can sort of get quite objective with them and actually see through everything in a different way, which gives you a sense of freedom to really be yourself. You know, remember, they might tell you how to eat, what they like, what they don't like. They're controlling you and boxing you into becoming someone that you're not. They don't even know who you are. Have you ever found that they're saying stuff to you that you're like, no, that's not actually even true. They tell you, oh, you really like that burger, for instance. And you're like, actually, I don't. But you know, you don't say it. It's even in your head. You don't even verbalize it because they are so adamant that you like something that you don't. Or they'll tell you something like, you loved your ex-boyfriends more than me. And you're like, I don't know where they're getting that from. It's just really random. It's all really crazy, you know. So it's kind of really interesting to see how narcissists will put you in an illusion. Not only are they living in an illusion themselves, but they actually create an illusion about who you are. They actually don't know who you really are. They don't know who you really are. They genuinely don't know who you are. They make out they know you, but they don't know you. They have a different version of you. And you're trying to then, is creating confusion of who are you. You actually get to a point where you actually don't know who you are anymore. And that is so tiring because, like I said, the biggest stress that is created in human beings is being who you're not, compromising yourself. It causes so much stress. It takes up so much energy to be someone that you're not. So once you realize that you don't know who you are anymore, it's actually progress. So I just wanted to bring that up. So sometimes people feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I am anymore. When you're in the relationship, in the illusion, you don't even know that you don't know who you are anymore. You don't know that you've lost contact, with your true self, that you don't know who you are. So know that some people will, like the narcissist, not be happy if you become your authentic self, your true self. But there'll be so many people, so many friendships that you'll create, people that will celebrate you because you are being your authentic self. And you will have a happier life, and you'll be around true friends and true people that want to support you to be who you truly are. So you don't have to pretend anymore. So let's look at the original trauma bond that you might have created. I really want you to think about, maybe go back to your parents, the original trauma, the original relationship. Maybe, you found, or it could be a relationship that you created early on. Maybe some trauma that you created, or maybe some trauma that was created later on in life. I really want you to go back and think about this. Obviously, when you were born, you absolutely wanted to be taken care of. Perhaps in a relationship, you want to be taken care of. That's a similar kind of feeling or vibe that you have, that you want to be taken complete care of. Similarly to being loved, just being taken care of, just like a parent would take care of you. You just want to be completely taken care of. So just think of a person or someone you want to love you and accept you. So when you go into relationships, it could be that you just want to be taken care of. You just want someone to love you and take care of you. Similarly, like how you would feel, being taken care of by a parent, a loving parent. You want to feel safe. You want that attachment with them. You want to feel a part of them. And you want them to feel a part of you, to feel safe. Now, that's because as a child, we need to feel safe. We can't survive without our parent. We need them to want to be a part of us and for us to be a part of them, so we feel completely taken care of. It's similar to being in the womb, right? We're vulnerable. We can't survive without the mother, and we want to be completely taken care of. But obviously, as we're growing up, there gets a point where we want to be our individual self. Our individual person. You want to do things yourself. You want to you're curious. You want to try things in your own way. And it's normal and natural for you to become who you truly want to be. There's nothing wrong with that. And ask yourself, when you were growing up, were you allowed to be who you truly wanted to be? Were you actually allowed to be the real you, to have your own emotions? Were you allowed to have emotions? Were you allowed to be you, to be curious, to express yourself, to ask questions in the right way, to dress the way you want to eat the way you want to explore the way you want to? Were you allowed to be? And you see, this is where the first original trauma bond will be created, where if we can't fulfill what our parents want us to be, we feel like we're being pushed away and we feel bad, right? And we feel guilty about abandoning them, that we're not being who they want us to be. But we also feel real pain about the fact that our parent or parents didn't accept us for who we truly are. You weren't allowed to. And that, again, that's where the trauma bond originally starts, right? And it could be that you are repeating this trauma bond over and over again. And so let's really break this down. There's 4 key things here that you really need to know. When we grow up, we've been given belief systems, we've been brainwashed to believe there's a certain way of doing. Everybody has. And if we do things in a certain way, we are good. And if we don't do things in that way, we're not so good. So we've got all these unconscious belief systems that we really need to relook at, right? You know, it could be that your parents might have told you that you've got to be careful of men, or, you know, men cheat, or women cheat, or women are controlling. I don't know what you had, but there will be some cultural beliefs that we have to let go of in order to actually relook at the narcissist in a different way, so that we can then break this cycle. So that's one thing you have to work through when you're looking at releasing yourself from toxic relationships and this trauma bond. Otherwise, you'll still carry on repeating and attracting narcissistic relationships in your relationships. So you really need to break that down with a therapist and really look at how you can do that. And if you're interested in doing that, I'm happy to support you doing that. So have a look in the resource section. The second thing you need to do is actually release and work through the guilt of abandoning or the relationship, of wanting to leave that relationship, the guilt associated with that. If you've been in a toxic relationship, it is not easy to leave because you will feel guilty. Sometimes people say things like, oh, you know, this is good about them, or that is good about them. No, it's not. It's just because you don't want to deal with the pain, the emotional pain, the guilt that you feel, and you're masking it with some other reason, you know, because you don't want to feel that guilt. It's really painful, feeling that guilt of leaving someone, you know, abandoning your parent in that way. It's like you're abandoning a child. It feels like that. It's so painful. Number 3 that you need to work through is actually working through how your parent or that person has abandoned you, because narcissists ultimately will abandon you. They will discard you. They will start to dismiss you and devalue you. And you have to work through that pain of being devalued, right? And release that. And again, if you're looking to do that, it's deep work. I can support you doing that. And really, we can release all that trauma so you can free yourself of all of that and free yourself from these repeating patterns. Number 4, what you need to do is break down that original vision that you created in that trauma bond and all your trauma bonds. That vision, that shared fantasy, if you like, of what you were meant to be like and what they were going to be like. You know, there's a shared fantasy. Do you still wish at some level that you could be what you wanted to be for your parents so that you could be loved? Do you still have that? You know, we have to work through that, because ultimately what we've got to do is get you to a space of individualization. You have to find your authentic self so that you don't repeat toxic relationships ever again. That is the key here. That's what I'm saying at the beginning, is that toxic relationships are actually an opportunity for you to actually heal and liberate yourself fully so that you can be your authentic self, your true self. This is a process of liberation so that you can find who you truly are. And yes, I understand that you won't know who you are or what you like because you haven't really worked through these 4 areas. You need to look at what was it that you wanted to do for your parents growing up? Who did you want to become for them? And were you not allowed to be that? And that will be the reason why you're repeating these. So there's a lot, you might have done loads of therapy, but you just got to work through these 4 areas that are specific to toxic relationships so you can be released. And so you can move forward and really understand what love is again, rather than what you've been conditioned to believe love is. Otherwise, you're going to keep going round and you're going to sacrifice yourself to give to the other person because you don't know, you haven't become that individualized person that you were craving to become, so that you can release yourself from that original trauma bond. So look, if you're looking to do that, if you really want happiness, you really want to make the most of your life moving forward, and you just want to be free and actually liberate yourself and feel free to do something. Maybe you're meant to do something after you've healed this. Whatever it is, if you're really wanting to move forward, then please look in the resource section. I've got a masterclass that you definitely want to download so you can really understand the impacts on the brain. Everything makes a lot more sense, because you can heal. You can really heal, and there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to stick with this trauma bond just because you feel guilty. The trauma bond is really feeling guilty, is sticky, right? You can't get out of it, but you'll end up repeating. So you can make a choice. Is this how I want to, continue my life for the rest of my life? Or do I want more? Do I want to liberate myself? Do I want freedom from this? Do I want to, develop spiritually, emotionally, get my thinking back to becoming that positive person again and really feel the joy and love in my life again? If that is for you, then, and please have a look at the free masterclass. And as always, the number one thing that you need to do is to discover who you really are. Part of that is to really love, bring love in your life again, stop that criticism. Start really, loving yourself in lots of different ways, and, give yourself that understanding, compassion, and forgiveness, so that you can then really explore and discover who you truly are, the amazing, amazing person that you are. So never stop loving yourself, no matter what, because love, honestly, is the greatest healer. And keep being compassionate and loving towards yourself. Till next time.